everyone, and welcome to the 28th presentation in the Virtual History series presented by Baltimore Heritage and the Baltimore Architecture Foundation. I'm Ren Southard, co-chair of the AIA Baltimore's Urban Design Committee. Thank you to everyone who donated to be with us this week. Your support is crucial for producing the virtual histories for free each week, so we appreciate your generosity and support. With Giving Tuesday coming up, I'll hope you'll consider making donations to Baltimore Architecture Foundation and Baltimore Heritage. Next week, we are taking a break for Thanksgiving, and we'll be back December 4th for a presentation on Baltimore's historic hospitals with Meg Fielding. Today's presentation is on the Baltimore Greenway. The Baltimore Greenway Trails Coalition has been working in collaboration with the city to create a 35-mile world-class network of urban trails that link together the diverse neighborhoods, cultural amenities, and outdoor resources that make up the landscape of Baltimore City. When complete, the network will connect anchor institutions, parks, destinations with Baltimore's diverse communities. The trail network will transform the public realm by providing equitable, healthy, low-stress access to open space, reliable transportation, and recreation for people of all ages and abilities. The coalition will build on and support already emerging initiatives in the city, including Parks and People's One Park concept, Baltimore City's Green Network Plan, and the updated Baltimore City Bicycle Master Plan, and a revitalized master plan for the Middle Branch. AIA Baltimore's Urban Design Committee became involved when a member brought the project to our attention. UDC jumped at the chance to partner with the existing citywide planning effort. To date, the committee members have been active in volunteer schematic design sessions, community outreach events, and bicycle rides to explore unbuilt segments of the trail. This project continues a proud Baltimore tradition of adaptively reusing old industrial spaces. When complete, the 35-mile Greenway network will connect some of the finest parks on the East Coast and open them up to residents in a whole new way, promoting social equity, improving health and wellness, protecting the environment, creating active transportation connections, potentially generating millions of dollars while promoting strong business and supporting local economies. The modern day trail vision is inspired by the 1904 Olmsted Plan for Baltimore, which called for creating a network from the city's vast amounts of public space. Today, RTC and the city have identified new opportunities in the built environment to bring this vision to reality. And here to tell you more about this exciting project are Jim Brown, director of the Trail Nations Project, and Ethan Abbott, Baltimore Greenway Project Manager. Please add questions you have to in the Zoom chat box, and we will get to as many as we can at the end. With that, let's get started. Jim?
Great, thank you, Ren. Can everybody hear me? Let's see. Yes, so thank you all. It's very exciting to be here. I want to thank the AIA and the Urban Design Committee, as well as Baltimore Heritage, for hosting us. While Ethan is getting his slides up, I'll say a little bit about the project. My name is Jim Brown. I'm Trail Nation Director at Rails to Trails Conservancy, and shortly I'll hand it over to Ethan Abbott, our project manager here at Rails to Trails. Ethan and I are both located in Baltimore and very invested in this project. A little bit about Rails to Trails. We are a nationwide trail building group based in Washington, D.C., with offices throughout the country, one of which is at the Impact Hub here in Baltimore. And the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network and the Trails Coalition are one of our Trail Nation projects, which are projects of real significance that the organization is dedicating a lot of resources to help local communities complete the trail networks that they've identified. So next slide, please, Ethan. And this image is what you've seen. We're looking at the east side of the city here. This graphic was produced by Unknown Studios, so a big thank you to Unknown Studios. What we're really talking about is connecting all of the city through this trail network, and this is looking at the southeast section of Baltimore, looking north. The yellow line closest to you is a combination of the Inner Harbor Promenade, Boston Street, and the Norfolk Southern Railroad corridor on the right side of the map heading north. And then on the left side of the map is the Jones Falls Trail. So we're really talking about Jones Falls Trail exists, and those other parts I mentioned don't exist yet. So there's some of the opportunities that we're talking about when we're talking about transforming historical corridors into new trail networks. Next, please. And I won't get too much into this because Ethan's going to show you some data a little bit further. But when we are talking about the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network, we're talking much more than just a trail network or bicycle infrastructure. We really see these projects to be integral to the fabric of the city through promoting social equity, improving health and wellness, protecting the environment, creating active transportation connections, and promoting economic development. Right. And so the Greenway is it will be a 35-mile world-class urban trail network, which will link together many of the things that Ren just mentioned, and Ethan will show you in a minute. So we can go to the next slide. And on the right is the map of the concept. Of the 35 miles that we're talking about, 25 already exist through the Gwens Falls Trail, the Jones Falls Trail, and the Herring Run Trail. So we're really focused on about 10 miles of gaps in what we call corridor segments. And those are in about four, there's more than four, but they're in about 4 key sections. And Ethan will walk us through these, but real quickly, they're the Gwens Falls Parkway and Mundalman area, in between Gwens Falls, Sleekum Park, and Druid Hill. The 33rd Street corridor area between Druid Hill and Herring Run Park. Then the Middle Branch area, which we all know there's a lot going on there, looking at connecting the Middle Branch and South Baltimore area to downtown. And then the fourth, and I think one of the most exciting, although they're all exciting, but from a built environment perspective, on the east side is this Norfolk Southern Railroad corridor that we talked about. There's the potential for a 2-mile long rail trail connecting Canton Waterfront Park up towards Northeast Baltimore, the Herring Run Trail, and Lake Montebello. So real quickly, and Ren mentioned some of this, and Ethan will have a chance to get more in depth. The network, when complete, will touch over 100 neighborhoods directly, and it'll be within a half mile of almost every neighborhood in the city, with the exception of some of the very northern neighborhoods. The plan has been developed into a lot of on their official city plans and regional plans. Already, Rails to Trails has helped direct close to $2 million in investment through planning or new grants that are coming online soon from state and federal sources for future trail planning. And I'll leave it there. There's a lot to talk about, but we can go to the next slide. And this slide will be shared. The presentation can be shared too. So all this got started with Rails to Trails and Bike More and a number of local organizations starting to build out the coalition that Ren mentioned. And we call ourselves the Baltimore Greenway Trails Coalition. And currently we have over 50 organizations ranging from neighborhood associations, private businesses, community development corporations, local funders, and very importantly, a significant dedication from many Baltimore City agencies, which you see on the right side of the slide. Next, please. So I'm going to turn it over to Ethan, and Ethan's going to share, and Ethan will show you some of the opportunities and some of the neat design standards. But I guess one thing I didn't mention is that a lot of these corridors are very, everything in Baltimore is very historic, and a lot of these corridors have a lot of historic significance in the city, be it the old industry, old brownfields, former railroad corridors and stream valleys, or the historic Olmsted parkways, which we can talk about too. So while this is a very contemporary vision, it's really built off of centuries of history of transportation and community development in the city. And with that, I'll hand it over to our newest addition to the Baltimore team, Ethan Abbott.
Thank you very much, Jim, and a pleasure to be here with you all today. Just want to go over some of the benefits that Jim, talked about with the Greenway Trail Network. I guess one of them, first and foremost, is of course just the increased connectivity that the Greenway will provide to pretty much all residents or all areas of the city. Again, it'll touch over 70 networks or 70 neighborhoods directly, but on top of that, most of the other neighborhoods within the city will touch the neighborhood within at least a half mile proximity of the trail. So it's really, connectivity, across the board. And on top of that, that's just, within the city, not to mention plans for connectivity, possibly northern or southern to BWI or to Annapolis or to the other trail networks that exist within the greater Baltimore area. And so going forward, that connectivity applies to job access as well. for cities, this increased activity, it makes access to the city's most prominent economic centers and employment centers just that much more accessible to local city residents. And it's not just the main ones, it's not just the big ones like downtown or Harbor East. It's also those really intimate local connections that really make individual communities thrive themselves. Like Mondawmin, for those of you familiar with Baltimore, or Hamden as well. Really, stressing the importance of those connections and really amplifying that as well. And so improved health as well. Similarly, as you can see from the map on the right, and also using the legend, what we notice is that areas of Baltimore with lower rates of physical activity, these are communities that are typically underserved by the city in multiple ways, whether it's the transportation infrastructure that exists within the communities, or the lack of open or green spaces that they have access to. One of the things that the Greenway does and can provide for these areas is that potential, to really provide communities, and fill these gaps where the health disparities do exist, providing them with everyday opportunities for outdoor recreation. And so moving forward, the same kind of applies to improved equity as well. You're talking about this increased connectivity, and it's across the board. But one of the things about the Greenway itself is that we want to emphasize is that, it really does stress, and bring potential to address some of the issues that plague some of the city's most disenfranchised communities, the low opportunity areas, whether it be people disenfranchised because they have low vehicle access, or no access to vehicles, or low home ownership rates, whatever it may be. The Greenway Trail Network really does provide a great opportunity to strategically, aid and benefit these communities in this kind of way. And so stepping back, those are some of the benefits that the Greenway can provide just generally. But I kind of do want to show you guys just the scope of the trail network itself and what it entails. And so first I'm going to start with, of course, the northern corridors Jim mentioned, which were, again, the Olmsted corridors, those historic linear park systems. With these corridors, these are the connectors of the northern section of the Greenway, and will essentially connect over west, Gwynns Falls Parkway to Druid Hill, and over east, Druid Hill to Lake Montebello. And it'll do so through these linear connecting parks, which will essentially revitalize the communities that lay, within close proximity to them. As you can see within the rendering on the screen, this one depicts a possible, what the 33rd Street corridor can possibly look like. And going forward, we have one of the renderings just recently created for us by Unknown Studios, a local design studio here in Baltimore, that kind of goes over the connectivity of the Gwynns Falls Parkway over west. So this is what you're looking at here, Gwynns Falls Parkway as it connects to Druid Hill. Similarly, we have another axon map provided to us by Unknown. And this one kind of goes over the connectivity over east, as you see, connecting Lake Montebello here in Clifton Park, the main green spaces over here, to the 33rd Street corridor, and eventually over to Druid Hill Park. And they're really connecting that general area. So moving south, we have South Baltimore, and really focusing on connectivity within the neighborhoods in and around this area, but also, of course, the areas around Middle Branch Park. And one of the things about this area is that oftentimes they feel a bit disconnected, even though it's situated right beneath Baltimore and beneath Inner Harbor. For multiple reasons, they feel disconnected from the city as a whole, whether it's due to infrastructure or due to industries that have left the areas. So one of the key things about this area is actually, developing those connections, not only within those local areas, but also getting them connected to the Inner Harbor, a local economic center, and of course, just greater Baltimore in general as well. And one of the renderings is Clare Street, located in South Baltimore, which kind of describes what the possible connection could look like close to the light rail. And going forward, we have another rendering, which you see, this is of just a possible design of what one of the Westport waterfront shared youth paths can look like, situated just above Middle Branch Park. Similarly, this right here, this is a rendering of Sharp and Stockholm Streets, which are in Solo Gibbs, close to M&T Bank Stadium, for those of you unfamiliar with Baltimore, which is essentially the gateway into South Baltimore. And then again, we have one of the axon maps provided to us by Unused Studios, which kind of robustly just shows just the general connectivity that the Greenway can provide to the South Baltimore area. And again, if you can follow the cursor here, this is the trail itself and Middle Branch Park, and then of course the rest of South Baltimore, but really stressing that connectivity between these connecting areas. And so that's it for South Baltimore. Moving forward, we have a really interesting segment that is seeing a lot of attention as of late, and it's the eastern corridors, the eastern sections of the Baltimore Greenway Trail Network. And there are two key segments in this area that we are really looking forward to get off the ground in order to get this connecting running. The main one being the BG&E corridor, which is situated in Northeast Baltimore. And it's situated, like I said, in Northeast Baltimore. The city is currently in negotiations with BGE in order to actually get and acquire the land for use. And when it's done, it will connect essentially the communities of Northeast Baltimore down to Southeast Baltimore. And it'll do so through this kind of unique urban oasis that you see here depicted in this rendering. And if any of these are familiar, like people actually, this is already a neighborhood itself. So really focusing and, you know, stressing connections that are already existing within the area. This right here is another rendering that we have of the BG&E corridor, again, showing the possible connections that can exist within the area. And you have to keep in mind, again, that residential neighborhoods exist all throughout this area. And so the second key element to the eastern corridor, the eastern section of the Greenway, is the Norfolk Southern Rail Corridor, situated just south of the BG&E corridor, as you can see in the map depicted above. In this section, again, the city is currently in negotiations to acquire this land, but it's a great potential for really connecting that east side and connecting the BG&E corridor down through East Baltimore and connecting it to the Canton waterfront property, or to Canton waterfront and to the Harbor Promenade. So really stressing and fully connecting that eastern section. And as you guys can see, some of the depictions on the right, the communities over here are really interested and invested in actually the beautification of their communities, really turning it into an accessible green space, open space, but also one that, you know, of course, amplifies local businesses that exist within the areas and communities too. And like I said about local businesses, this rendering right here is one that we have depicting one of the local plazas that exists over in that corridor, situated off Haven Street. And essentially this is a corridor that the BG&E, or excuse me, the Norfolk Southern rail line will run right through, but it shows the potential that the trail network can have to these areas. This is, again, a business plaza that has local breweries, local design centers. So really showing what the trail network can be for just a small section like this. So moving forward, we have another axon map that again shows the connectivity within South Baltimore. And as I mentioned, if you guys can see my cursor, the Norfolk Southern Trail is right here, and it runs north and south of Baltimore, and it will connect eventually to the Canton waterfront property, to the Canton waterfront and to the Harbor Promenade. Again, really, you know, stressing the connections that exist within the area. And so that's kind of it in terms of the connections and in terms of, you know, that regional accessibility that the Greenway will provide to these local areas. And it's all very exciting. And like I said, we have a lot of momentum, and there's a lot of things in the woodworks right now. Currently looking forward to next steps. And some of those next steps, which again have been steps that we have always done, key network planning, whether that be with city agencies or local partners like the AIA, or of course the coalition that Jim mentioned, made up of local universities, local organizations, local community groups, really a robust coalition. A second part of that is possibly developing an economic development strategy plan, which capitalizes on a report that we just released, actually, called an economic impact study, which we can talk about and also link during the next part of this session. But again, focusing and capitalizing on the momentum that recent study that we just released has, and kind of going more in depth and explaining the more robust capabilities that the Greenway can provide to Baltimore and to regions. And then, yeah, again, finally, that's pretty much it. I think On top of that includes branding communications, which this is something, of course, presentations like this, we're really figuring out great ways to present the Greenway to the public and to get great support for it. And then on the ending note, we have one more visual that is provided to us, again, by Unknown Studios. It's kind of a great dusk time, nighttime rendering that has a bit of ambiance to it, but shows, again, the connectivity between that the Greenway can have to essentially all of Baltimore. And essentially, if you go into the foreground, you can see it scales all the way back. But it's a really great potential, and it's a really great project. So thank you guys all for being here with us today. And on that note, I think I will end. So yeah, thank you guys all very much. Appreciate being here.
Thanks, Ethan. And I have a couple of questions in the chat that I'll just launch into, and I'm going to take them in chronological order. We did have one comment from John Corin that says, we have a similar vision for Anne Arundel County Trail Network that would connect with the Middle Branch Trail and to our south connections to the Capitol Trails Network. He'd be happy to say a few words about it. I don't know if we have an extra minute to have him talk, but please do get in touch with Jim and Ethan. There's a question. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Ren, I can just comment. I don't know if it's the most up-to-date, but I'll quickly note that Greater Baybrook Alliance received a state grant to design that connection, to do preliminary design, and they're working with MedStar Hospital, Greater Baybrook in the Brooklyn neighborhood, and to my knowledge, some Anne Arundel County advocates. John, you may know that, but if the group doesn't know.
Yeah, Jim, I'll just quick add, in addition to that, we just got a $600,000 design grant, Maryland Bikeways design grant, to go to 100% design from the BWI spur to the Nursery Road light rail, where we would meet the Greater Baybrook connection. So even more progress than the Greater Baybrook grant has been made.
Very exciting.
Very much so.
Great. So the next question is from Kristen Bragg, who says, while I appreciate what Ethan is saying, many of the trails actually don't look like they go through, mostly skirt around some of the low-income communities that could most use this kind of trail. How do you all plan to address this issue?
I'll start. Ethan, feel free to chime in. But the image of the first diagram of the whole network also showed the on-lane networks of bike lanes and sidewalks, and they very much spoke out to the 35-mile loop. So there is a lot of connectivity potential there. Also, this map is not static. It's part of some plans, but it can also change if communities identify opportunities to make stronger connections. A lot of the alignment was built on the landscape typologies and the availability of these corridors, but there's certainly room to build more connectivity in Baltimore.
Right. And I'll add to that too, something just for time I wasn't able to say, but as part of that, I mentioned that most neighborhoods would be within at least a half mile of the trail network. And even more so to that point, most neighborhoods, almost all, would be within at least 3/4 of a mile. But with that too, you also have to think about, what that means for some city residents. Think about city residents who are disenfranchised, who use the bus system, but the bus system only gets them 3 miles from their house. Talking about first and last mile connections, this is something that the Greenway really can provide, and it's very detailed and it's very, I guess, encompassing. And that's one of the things that we're trying to convey, is that the Greenway, it really can provide in an encompassing manner these types of benefits. But I will say, and of course, this is something that is integral to the project. It takes that community level input, that community level outreach to get that to fruition, or to actually see that happen. So that's some more context for you.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
On that point, are there improvements planned for those on-street networks?
Which ones are you referring to?
The ones that Jim mentioned as connectors to the overall loop.
Yeah, the green lines that exist on that diagram are what's in the master plan, and those are for totally separated from traffic infrastructure. So that means not a bike lane, but some type of protected facility that has a vertical separation between the person using it, walking or biking there, and the vehicle traffic. So something similar to Maryland Avenue or sections of the Jones Falls Trail near the prison and the farmers market, where there's a vertical buffer between the vehicle lane and the travel lane. What's shown on those maps are everything that's planned. Most of what's built exists on Monument Street and Maryland Avenue right now. So two key north, south, and east-west connectors. The other pieces further into West and East Baltimore are in the pipeline now, and those are managed by Department of Transportation. So that's a little bit separate than the network, but we work closely with those organizations and agencies to make sure everything's connected.
Great, thank you for clarifying. The next question is from Mark Wernick. Will the Greenway use existing streets as part of the trail?
Well, that'll be design answers. Some of the corridor gaps are within road right-of-way, where we think that through a very robust outreach and design process, trail facilities could be designed into the road right-of-way. But our goal for the 35 miles is that it's entirely separated from traffic and off-road, that will be accessible to people riding bikes, people walking, strollers, roller skaters, wheelchairs, and everybody. So if that does mean that some of that section will have to be on the road for short distances, there will have to be design accommodations to make sure that it's safe and accessible for all types of users.
Great. Question from Greg Hinchcliffe. This eastern section was once part of the plan for the Red Line. If that transit project is reborn, will the trail and transit be able to coexist?
They should be able to. One of the things that we pride ourselves on at Rails to Trails is, of course, spearheading and advocating for, of course, rail with trail lines as well, abandonment, but just incorporating rail systems within trail systems as well. And we worked and had experiences within other projects incorporating rail systems within active rail systems, within active multimodal trails as well. So that's something that we're looking forward to possibly exploring this time around too, if it happens, if it comes to fruition. So yeah.
And yeah, the corridor is wide enough to accommodate both transit and trail. And like Ethan mentioned, we think these types of systems are only really valuable when they can support each other.
Where can people find the renderings and maps from Unknown Studio?
So they're brand new. This is one of Ethan's first presentations, and it's also one of the first times we've ever used these renderings. A big thanks to Unknown and also to Ren and others at UBC for providing some of this design help. I put a link in the chat. It's not very far up in the chat right now, that has the some of the Unknown Studio renderings, and we'll be adding them to our Rails to Trails website also.
Great, thank you. Daniel Paschal, and I'm sorry if I butchered your name, had a comment and a question. The East Coast Greenway Alliance is looking to connect Baltimore to Anne Arundel to DC networks as well. Is there an effort to add wayfinding signage to help residents find their way to the network?
Hi Daniel. I don't have a good
Jim, you're cutting out a bit. Jim.
I know Baltimore for the connect. I know that the mayor's office and South Baltimore Gateway Network have funding for trail signage in Baltimore City to keep people on the existing Middle Branch and Glens Falls Trail. That I think that'll, Daniel's point, will have to be a big part of the process with Greater Baybrook and Anne Arundel County as part of the grants that John Cornyn and I mentioned for that connectivity south, because that's a crucial link on the East Coast Greenway. And for those of you that don't know, the Jones Falls Trail, which is part of this 35-mile network, is also part of the East Coast Greenway as it goes from Maine to Florida. Right.
Not only that, Jim, but I think the effort from the city to increase the signage within the city, it's actually pretty robust. It's pretty citywide. Glens Falls, Jones Falls, and Herring Run. So I assume it's not too much of a leap to say that possible extensions or connectivity to other areas within the city or outside the city will also see the same treatment of trail signage and appropriate wayfinding.
Okay. We're out of time. Nathan, I'm going to do a time check. Should we keep going or we just have a few more questions?
Yeah, I think we could do probably one more question.
Okay, great. So I'll kind of bridge there's a couple of questions that are in the same vein. How can people get involved with providing input and advocating for the project? How will people be kept up to date? And will the presentation be available for download? So we'll kind of bundle that last bit of questions about how to get involved and how to stay up to date.
So getting involved or staying up to date, let's cover that one first. Us as an organization, we're putting out multiple, again, referencing the economic impact study that we just put out as well. But us and our partners as well, we're pretty much always giving out active information about the trail network. So that's essentially what I would recommend. If you go to our website and you see who our partners are, either it's us, Bike More, of course, Baltimore City agencies, staying connected with them and updated about them and the projects that they're entailing will help you, stay abreast with the Trail Network project. Because again, it is a very cohesive project, between us as an organization, as a nonprofit, Bike More, and again, multiple other city agencies and organizations as well, who are providing, again, their own updates as well. So that's just one avenue to go to stay updated about the whole trail project.
And I would add railstotrails.org/Baltimore, which I think has been put in the chat a few times, has an email sign up. You can also email Ethan or I, whose emails are on the screen right now, and we can add you to our email list. We have not had a lot of public facing meetings. So we traditionally would have coalition meetings in the afternoons or the evenings every other month. Since COVID has happened, we haven't really had many of those. We've been doing more one-on-one partner meetings. But by emailing us and letting us know you want to be added to the list, that's a good way to stay up to date on the goings on of the network. We have a Facebook presence also, both through Rails to Trails Conservancy and the Baltimore Greenway Trails Coalition on Facebook. You can find us there. That's another way to stay on top of events.
And to the last point, this presentation is being recorded, and I put a link in the chat to the AIA Baltimore and Baltimore Architecture Foundation YouTube page, where you can find all of our virtual histories presentations, all of our Doors Open presentations, and everything that we've been doing this year. Good. Thank you, everybody. This is a great presentation.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Well, thank you, guys.